Good morning. This is retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church, Little Lutheran Church in Amherst, New York, part of Buffalo. Well, we welcome you to our broadcast this morning for this 11th Sunday after the Feast of Holy Trinity, August 28, 2022. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. The sun is shining, and it's as the end of August. It's still been pretty warm. Been pretty nice. It hasn't been terribly rainy. Sometimes the rainy season sets in, but not yet. Maybe in September, huh? Anyways, well, the text this morning for this 11th Sunday after Feast of Holy Trinity is from the Gospel of Luke, the 18th chapter, verses 9 through 14. And the first verse, verse 9, tells what this text is about. It's about the difference between two different kinds of people. One kind of person who trusts in themselves, and the other who looks to something outside of himself for help. That's the difference here. Okay, for the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. And he, that's Jesus, and he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous, and despised others. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee, the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even this publican. I fast twice in the week, I give tithes of all that I possess, and the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbles himself shall be exalted. Here ends that portion of the gospel text. I said at the beginning, this is about two different kinds of people. They're actually very different, although in some respects, they're identical. Sounds strange? Well, let's start with the identical part. The one saw himself or convinced himself that he was different, that he was a good person fundamentally, that fundamentally there was, well, that if you looked at him from a distance, he would look pretty good. And, maybe he was right. He looked religious. He gave him himself and his possessions, his wealth. He did all the right things. He smiled at the right time. He was pleasant to the right people. In his mind and the mind of others around him, he appeared to be an okay person. The other person was, maybe not as kind, maybe didn't smile at all the right times, but fundamentally, pretty much like the other, went to work, went home, had his family. As you see, even though the two saw themselves differently, the funny part is they're identical because they're people. And people are all the same, really. If you go to a doctor takes your blood pressure, takes your weight, can examine you according to all different criteria and using different tests. And the funny thing about going to a doctor is that when you're sitting on the doctor's table in that little examining robe that they give you, we're all pretty much the same. We're all just human beings. And you see, this has a deeper truth, because when God looks at us, we are also all the same. Not only when my dog wants attention. When the doctor looks at us, we're all the same. We're measurable. The same piece of paper can put the data on the same piece of paper for any person that walks into his office, if you're a doctor. Well, with God, it's the same way. He looks at us and he sees the same thing. Someone that's in a broken relationship with him. You see, when we talk about sin, we talk about the reality of the human condition. We're not talking about how we see ourselves. We're talking about a view from outside. How we appear, not to others, because that doesn't matter much. Some have a lot of friends if you're on Facebook, and other people aren't even on Facebook or maybe isolated, don't have any friends that they think of, know of. But it doesn't matter, because when God sees us from his point of view, we're identical. And there's none of us that are righteous. None of us that are in a good relationship with him. None of us that can stand next to him and say, hi. And dogs are in rare form today. We're watching our son's dog. And he talks. He moans and complains mostly. Anyways, you see, when God looks at us from the outside, it's only his point of view that really matters. From our point of view, we can think anything we want to of ourselves. And that's what Jesus is saying in this text. And he spoke this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. That part that says which trusted in themselves is from a Greek word, pe poitheontes. Got that wrong. Pe poitheotes. I'm dyslexic, and I can actually mess up several different languages at the same time. What this is, it's an accusative plural masculine participle in the perfect. It's an adjectival, not adverbial participle, meaning it's a word describing a noun. It's how these people saw themselves, were convinced in themselves that they were dikaios, that they were righteous, that they were able to stand next to God and smile at him and go, see, we're fine. Ignoring the reality that, in fact, from God's point of view, from his perspective, they were not fine. And this is compared in this story that Jesus tells to another man who came before God and said, look, I know things aren't fine. I get it. I'm not sure exactly what this is about. Because, I've been a pastor for 37, 38 years, retired. And the longer I live, and the more I live, the less I understand this whole idea of sin. I mean, we are so insignificant. We are so tiny. Have you ever seen these pictures from space? There's a picture that in particular stands out in my mind. It's one of Voyager's last photos of Earth as it was leaving the planetary group. It snapped a photo of our planet. And in that photo, our planet is nothing more than a speck. The whole planet is just a speck in this immense distance of photo as Voyager, the spacecraft, was leaving our solar system. Earth was just a speck. And on that speck are billions of people. And of those billions of people, we're just a speck, less than a speck. And, here's a reality. People worry about the end of the world. People worry about things like that. The entire population of the world dies out about every 110, every 120 years. The entire population in that period of time dies off. The whole population. Now, there's a lot of overlap. Yeah, kids are being born and old people die frequently and daily. But the point of fact is, about every 120 years, the entire population of the world dies off. You don't find someone walking around who's 140 years old. No one. And so when you look back at this little speck of dust floating in this vast universe, why would this being this God, if you want to call him that, or call it that, I don't know. Why would he have any interest, care so much about us and our relationship to him? But you see, that's what religion is. Religion is about this being and his relationship to us and how he sees us. Otherwise, as far as I can tell, there's no point for religion. If we're all just alone on this planet and doing the best we can or not doing the best we can, really doesn't matter, does it? Then you might as well eat, drink, and be merry. The hedonists have got it right, if that's all life is. But if there is this other being, and he expresses an interest in us, and in fact considers us in mercy. You see, this one man in the story Jesus tells understood something quite profound, that this being who sees this planet that's just a speck, even to a small satellite, considers us important, so much so that he considers our condition to be important to himself. And in so doing, he decided to enter our condition, to become one of us. And he sent his son, Jesus, to be born of Mary, to become the creature, to become part of that speck of dust floating in space. Why? I can't for the life of me imagine. Would I waste my time on us? Absolutely not. No way. The human race is, from all I can tell, just a completely lost cause. We always tend toward the wrong things. We glamorize what's wicked and evil in this world, and we ignore people that are actually nice or good. The only thing that are newsworthy is something that's sensationally out of the ordinary, and almost always bad. And so this is our world. Would I waste my time with this place if I were some other place, some other being? Absolutely not. I'd walk away and say, you know what? That's just a speck of dust floating in the universe. Who cares? They only live a max of 120 anyways. So what? Big deal. But this being, this one we call God, for lack of now knowing who he is, he steps forward, joins our midst, becomes one of us, and then fixes the relationship that was broken. Why would he do this? I don't know. But the story of religion, at least of Christianity, is that he did do this. Jesus died on the cross for the sins of the world. Again, a formula that only God himself could understand. I don't get it. I have absolutely no idea how that repairs the relationship between God and us. But from God's point of view, it does. Okay. And that's what the difference between these two people here. One is convinced. The word, verb I gave you before, the participle, the adjectival participle, comes from the root word patho. It's to be self-convinced, or possibly convinced from the outside, but in this case, it's someone who's talked himself into the idea that even God must look at him and say, hey, well done, you. When the other man is more honest and simply says, yeah, no, not so much. No, I'm not that great a person. And just sets himself before God and says, you know, if there's any help for this relationship, it's got to be from your side, because it's certainly not going to be coming from my side. So that's how that goes. So anyways, that's the idea of the text here, that we don't have to try to convince ourselves that we're something great and wonderful, but in fact that we can simply trust and rely and be convinced that God will take care of this, has taken care of this, sent his son Jesus to die on the cross, like 2,000 years ago, and that things are better. Well, again, this has been retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church, Little Lutheran Church, in Amherst, New York. And we welcome you to our little broadcast this morning. Okay, take care, be well, and that's it. Bye-bye.